Hello, welcome to Six String Therapy. I'm DJ MayDay,
And
your
I'm
artist.
sorry, and I'm Professor S, psychotherapist. Shall we do it?
That's okay.
Sorry, guys. We've been doing this for a little bit, so we're
Uh,
working out the kinks still. Thanks.
so today we're going to talk about Kanye West and everything that's been happening
Mm,
with Kanye. And I don't want to go through, exactly what he's done. There's plenty of information about what he's going through,
mm,
but just in case, I just want to run through a quick synopsis of what happened recently. So Kanye West, during one of his fashion shows, he wore a White Lives Matter T-shirt,
mhm, mhm.
and that just got the black community and, quite frankly, everybody up in arms, and rightfully so. But I'm not going to address that specifically. But I'm just going to keep going, just so you can kind of get a full picture of what's happening.
Mhm.
And he also tweeted that he was going DEath Con 3 on Jewish people. So after he tweeted this, he was pretty much taken off of Twitter. So that's another thing that's happening.
Okay, what does that? What does that mean that he's doing DEF CON 3 on Jewish people? What does that? What's that
Well,
mean?
he was basically, blaming them for everything that kind of negatively is happening to him.
Oh, to him specifically.
Yeah, like he feels
Oh,
like
okay,
he's being attacked at the bank,
got you.
between the banks, the music industry, movie industry, media in general,
Okay, got it.
is run by Jewish people, and it's kind of attacking him.
Okay.
And Jewish people are, you know, from my understanding, are up in arms because
Hmm.
these are all kinds of things that rang true in the 30s in Nazi Germany.
Hmm.
So they're very sensitive to like this kind of,
Demonizing them as a
yes,
people.
yes, and
Yeah.
saber rattling, so to speak,
Okay.
about him. So he did that, okay, and
Hmm.
got kicked off of Twitter basically. And then he goes on other social media platforms like Drink Champs. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a podcast about um, giving flowers to great rappers, performers, and
When you
he
say giving flowers, you mean like acknowledging them?
acknowledging them.
Oh,
Right?
okay, got you.
They
Giving
have a
flowers. Yeah,
on Drink Champs they have a mantra: if you haven't been in the game 10 years, you can't even come on the show.
got you. Yeah,
So it's like paying respect to
yeah.
But and
Just
Nori, he's
honoring the artists.
yeah. So he goes on that,
Okay.
and he's angry there. So he's really leaning in. He's leaning in on other rappers. He's leaning in on Puffy and Jay-Z. He's pretty much telling everybody to go fuck
Mm,
themselves. He's ranting about Jewish
mm,
people, but he's very angry at this
mm.
point.
But I think our focus is the bipolar, right?
Right,
That's where we're
but I just
going.
want to go through
Examples.
yeah, I just want to
Okay,
run
got you.
through just the brief history of it.
Yes, got
And
you.
then he goes on Pierce Morgan. And this, for
Mm,
me, when I watched him on Pierce Morgan, it was a different shift. He seemed very sad. And then
mm.
I was like, oh God, he's really going through it. He's not really mad. Something's going on.
Right. That's what you mean.
Right. So
Yes.
then I started
Mm,
becoming concerned for the brother. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like what's happening to, like what's really going on. So,
right.
his mental disorder was starting to become evident
Hmm.
at that
Hmm.
point.
Got you.
And then Pierce Morgan, on Drink Champs, Nori, DJ Enough, EFN, I'm sorry, DJ EFN, they are, more sympathetic to Kanye, and they're kind of really they're attempting to kind of curtail him a little bit and
Hmm.
try to.
Hmm.
They're not trying to make him look bad.
Right.
I didn't get that vibe anyway.
Okay.
But Pierce Morgan just kind of hung him out to dry.
Yeah.
Just kind of
So what did Pierce Morgan say or
Pierce
didn't
Morgan,
say?
when Kanye started talking crazy, just kind of stepped away and let
Let
him
him rant.
go.
Oh, okay.
And then you could see that he was kind of like in a cycle,
Yeah,
and he was
like a train wreck. It's like you're
yeah, he
watching a
was.
train wreck. Okay.
I felt really bad for the brother,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just sad to watch, and then I immediately thought of you, and like, what would you think? And
Mm-hmm.
since you're not as familiar, so I'm just gonna briefly read like kind of
Hmm.
some of his what his condition is. Ye was diagnosed with bipolar disorder after being hospitalized for a psychiatric emergency in 2016. In the years since, he's spoken about experiencing manic episodes, often tweeting and performing through them. He has also famously referred to bipolar disorder as his superpower and spoke candidly about the stigma around mental illness on the David Letterman show in 2019. Quote, I ramp up, I go high, he said on his episodes, describing feelings of paranoia, delusions, as well as being handcuffed and drugged and hospitalized. So bipolar
Mm,
being the center of what he's kind of going through.
mhm, mhm,
So I know I personally don't know anybody else better than my friend over here, Professor S, to kind of maybe help us and understand what bipolar
mhm,
disorder is.
mhm. Yeah, so like I was saying to DJ Mayday, there's so much information to really explain what bipolar disorder is because there's so many different types of bipolar and there's so many layers to it. So I'm going to try to simplify it as best as I can, and hopefully I'm not saying too much. So reel me in
Yeah, yeah,
if
no,
I
no,
do.
please go for it.
So bipolar disorder used to be called manic depression. So manic is when you're very high, you're very high energy, almost irritably. You want to do a lot. You speak fast. You have multiple things going on at the same time. That's a manic. And then the depressive side of it is when you feel like you have no pleasure in activities that you normally enjoyed. You don't want to be around people that you used to be around. You basically pull into yourself. And when you're bipolar, these they can ramp up either way. It's almost like a roller coaster. Sometimes a person may have an episode, what they call an episode. It could be maybe once during a week. It could be a couple of times during a month. But depending on how it shows up, it can be very intense where you're actually experiencing these high and lows very frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it could be a periodic thing. And usually when you have a manic episode, when you're very up and energized and like he described, it's a superpower. It feels really good. People feel very creative when they go into a manic episode. The only thing is that it's followed by a crash. It's always followed by a depressive episode, which is really, you can't function at your job. Your relationships become affected on either one.
Well, that's funny that the way he describes it is literally from interview to interview, and I think the interview was 2 days apart, where he
Mm,
was on Drink Champs and he was fired up.
yeah.
He sounded wild and he sounded really kind of not all the way there, but
Hmm.
the anger seemed to give him a little clarity, and at least he had a you knew he was just mad, but by the time he got on Pierce Morgan, he looked um, defeated
Mm,
and was not as coherent as he was on Drink Champs, and it
mm.
kind of speaks to basically how you described
Absolutely.
it, like the
Absolutely.
high and then the low. And just before you continue,
Hmm.
there was
Absolutely.
something Charlemagne the God had said. I think it was on Hell of the Week, or I don't remember what I was watching, but I know he said it. He said Kanye sounds like a man that's not going to be around for much longer, and that kind of
Mm,
scared me too. I don't want the
mm,
brother to die. I don't want him to do anything to himself or put himself in danger.
mm.
But I don't know if that's like, is that part of the?
Well, the thing is that, so for example, if you have a depressive episode, sometimes people think about taking their life, or they try to take their life, or they think about taking their life. That's one extreme. And then on the manic side, you can make really poor decisions. Like you can end up spending more. You can go on like a spending spree. You can gambling could be one of those things. You just spend more and more. Even sex, you want to have more and more sex, more riskier sex. So it can put you in jeopardy either extreme. And so that's one of the conditions of
That's funny because
bipolar
in the
disorder.
in the on Drink Champs, he was like really lashing out at rappers, like come for me, come for me. He was like daring them.
Right.
I don't know. It just seemed like a. And then when Charlemagne said that, I'm like, oh, this is shaping up in a very bad way.
Creating.
Somebody needs to come and help this brother.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like they really need to come help him because I don't know, it's sad.
Well, like you think you mentioned, he was in the hospital, and so sometimes the mania, the high part, can create what's called a psychotic episode where you break with reality. You don't really know what's going on around you. You think you know, but when people are observing you, you're not speaking in reality. And sometimes when you get to that point, when you're psychotic, you break free, you have to be hospitalized. You have to be, because that means you can harm
yourself.
somebody else, you can harm yourself, and again, you don't know the things that you're saying, things that you're doing, you really don't know. So in the hospital, you can be observed. You're in a safe environment, and they will try different medications to smooth out your mood. And some people don't want to be on meds, so that's a whole nother discussion. I'll get to it, but you have to be in a safe space,
Mm.
because you're going to harm somebody or yourself, or you're at risk of doing those things.
Mm.
So I just want to read about. Is there anything you want to add to
Oh
that
no
with
no no no!
Kanye?
I'm just soaking
Some.
all it up.
So I'm just going to give you some symptoms of the manic phase, and there's a whole bunch of things, but I'm just going to mention maybe five. So feeling high energy, being wanting to be very active, almost agitated. You have a very exaggerated sense of well-being and self-confidence. You begin to like unusually talk a lot, and your speech is very rapid. And sometimes you don't need any sleep. You could be in a manic episode and be awake for like 2 days and not feel like you're tired. And one is the racing thoughts, constantly having racing thoughts. And so those are just a few of those symptoms of the manic side. The depressive side, and again, when I talk about manic and depression, these are states of mind where it's really affecting relationships, your ability to work, your ability to take care of your family, all those main day to day things. When you have these extremes, those things get affected very much so. So that gives you an idea that you might be, or that person might be in a manic or depressive phase, because you can't really function. So, so for depression, the depressive episode, person may have a very depressed mood, feel very sad, feel empty inside, become tearful. The other could be just you don't have interest in things. You don't have any sense of pleasure, and just feeling empty. Also, weight loss. Sometimes, and you're not trying to diet, you just don't want to eat,
Mm.
and so the depression takes away your appetite, or you can end up eating too much to kind of fill that empty. Food becomes a way of managing this, and one thing too with children, with young children or teenagers, sometimes the child not gaining weight could be an indicator of depressive or a depressive episode. It's harder to diagnose with young people, but there's a whole
And that's a lot. It
nother
feels like a
part,
lot more dangerous too because you're still growing, and if you're not
and you're still
eating,
growing, and it can confuse. Different diagnoses could look like this. So a couple of other depressive symptoms are loss of a decreased concentration, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, and having suicidal thoughts and attempts. So you can see how there's some of the symptoms seem like they overlap in some kind of way. It's just figure the depressive part, you're feeling very down, and the manic is that you're very up. So the bipolar is two poles. So that's the term that is used now. And because it's called bipolar, there's different forms of bipolar. So there's bipolar 1, the bipolar 2. There's what they call, there's a cyclic kind of bipolar. And certain conditions, like medical conditions, like if you have a thyroid problem, like Wendy Williams, right?
mm,
Thyroid can induce depression, right?
mm.
Certain medical conditions. I think I wrote a few, but um, that's also something to be aware of when you're dealing with any mental health. But with the bipolar, these are things to really consider. Usually, bipolar is diagnosed in the late teens, early 20s. That's when it usually shows up. So Kanye was probably dealing with this way before it became obvious.
I know his mother was like a guiding light and like kind of his anchor to everything.
And when she passed away, that's when he began to go off the rails. So
Yeah.
that's a huge part to this too, because one way of kind of identifying your behavior is what are the indicators from family and friends.
Mm.
Like family and friends could talk to a doctor, a psychotherapist, and say, "Look, this is what we're seeing," and then you have the report. Because let's say if I'm having a bipolar episode, I may not call it that, but you seeing me going up and down like that, you might say, "Hey, this are you okay? Is there something wrong?" So sometimes you need an external observer. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, no, no. I was just
You're soaking it in. Is that what you're
yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah. Basically, because I'm
Soaking it
trying
in.
to see how that all those things ring true in the Kanye situation. I've watched his documentary. I've been a fan for a while. I love his music. So like, and I guess like everyone else, we just watch it. We're like watching a train wreck, right? But I feel like now it's getting serious, and I'm getting Michael Jackson flashbacks, and I don't want this brother to die. And I encourage anybody who is close to him, who cares about him, who can reach him, like please go get your man. You know what I mean? Like really, because you may save his life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And just to bring it back to the everyday man, if you have a family member, friend, son, daughter, whomever's close in your life that seems to be exhibiting these symptoms, that's an indicator that they may need help. So, when to find a doctor? So, one of the things when you really need to get some help for the person is when the emotional instability affects their life. So, they're not functioning the way they functioned whenever their life was much more stable. So, you may end up losing a job. You might end up having no money because you use all your money during a manic episode to gamble or whatever. Um, the person usually likes the highs. Like I think Kanye said, it's a superpower because when you have the highs, you really feel everything is in a very hyper pleasurable. It's a hyper creative feeling, and so when you find that person and they feel like they can be very productive when they're in that manic phase, but there's always a crash that comes behind it. So you look at the financial impact, legal relationships. These are the things that may indicate you need to get help, and it doesn't get better by itself.
Right.
That's the thing about bipolar disorder. It doesn't just get better. So um, if you need help and you're finding for yourself or a friend, there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 988. So consider that.
Well, that concludes this little short Six String Therapy. I'm DJ MayDay, your artist.
And I'm Professor S, your psychotherapist.
Thank you for listening to Six String Therapy.
Have a good
Peace.
day.